Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special CPL LinkedIn Live Leadership Conversations focused specifically on our latest Future Work Institute white paper, Future of Work Land, which has been developed over a 9-month period. I'm Barry Winkless, CSO of CPL and head of our Future of Work Institute. And I'm delighted today to be joined by my colleague, Yvette Cleland, CEO of CPL Lifesciences UK and UK Future of Work Institute Ambassador. So there's a title for you, Yvette. Now, Yvette, I know that you've been poring over this white paper, over the last kind of period of time, and I know you have some really interesting questions to ask of me. And equally, I have some questions to ask of you in an area I know you're very passionate about in the life sciences sector, particularly around skills development, which we'll get to in a few moments. But first, I think I have to hand over to you, and you're going to do your worst, I think, in terms of some difficult questions.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I have been poring over this paper for months, and I've used it a lot in my everyday work with some of our clients. So I have made a little list of questions, Barry. I know you're so passionate about the work that you've done for us, and I guess I'm going to kick us off by sort of asking you, this white paper has taken you nearly 10 months in terms of developing and in the making, and there's so much in there. And there are lots of fundamentals in there that I think are really, really important to any leaders thinking about the future of work. Can you give us some context as to the why of that paper?
Yeah, that 10 months feels like a long time as well, Yvette, just when you mention that. Yeah, look, I think the big thing for me was, look, we've all been part of this horrendous COVID crisis. And I think, when we had conversations around the future of work, they were generally getting mixed up around the whole area of remote working, hybrid working, and the where of working. But when we started, when we think about our own definition of the future of work and, the broad aspect of what the future of work is, we said, we need to actually create some kind of a paper that kind of sets the agenda. Number one, for example, what is the definition of the future of work that can be used by leaders? What are the kind of models that they can use in the real world, that actually makes sense. So we very much kind of developed this paper out of a kind of a guide really for leaders and a guide to help decision making into the future.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Now, something of great interest to me and things that were highlighted in the paper was a new definition for the future of work. And you started to introduce a new framework, the 3W model, which I found quite fascinating how you'd sort of formulated that together. Now, I know this is a key element of your forthcoming book that's going to be published towards the end of this year. So can you tell us a little bit more around this definition, the model, and why they're so important to that leadership decision making?
Yeah, right. So I think first and foremost, when we looked out there, there's no really kind of what I would call a comprehensive definition of what the future of work is. And in the document itself, we've come up with our own definition, which is the future of work is the purposeful study and integrated design of workplaces, workforces, and work tasks across multiple time horizons in the context of business and society. Now that sounds like a real mouthful, but there's a lot of kind of depth to that definition. I think the first thing is design, right, which is really, really important. So we have an ability as leaders to design the organization the way we want to design it, right? So that's a really important first point. So I think the first thing that really comes to mind around me, and we did an awful lot of workshops and real world interactions with clients, in the development of this paper. The first thing that comes on this one is leaders recognizing that they are designers of their future of work story. So that's the first thing. So they have an ability to really mold the future of work for their organization. So that's the design bit. The 3W bit is very important, which covers workplace. So that's where work takes place either in physical, digital, or virtual space. When we talk about workforce, that's very much around how the overall workforce is designed and managed. And then when we talk about work task, that's very much around the tools, the methods, the mindsets that actually deliver the work. And it's actually around the integration of those three that we can design a future work model that's specific to our organization, that can actually drive real levels of collaborative and competitive advantage. Now, that's the 3W bit. And then we talk about in terms of time and in terms of society, they're two equally important parts. So when we talk about time, where is our organization going to be from our 3 Ws in 2 years' time? Where are we going to be in 5 years' time? One of the things we really found in terms of the study was that fundamental questions aren't really being asked around, what is our toolkit that we're going to use in 5 years' time? What is our workforce going to be made up of? Is it going to be a network? Is it going to be a community? Is it going to be a mix of different blends? Is it going to be an ecosystem? So whilst these things are floating around in the ether, nobody's really kind of going, well, where are we going to be in 2 years' time? Where are we going to be in 5 years' time? What's the best place for us to be, given where we are now, that will give us some types of advantages, and particularly at a personal level? Because I always like to say the future work is fundamentally humane. So how do we make sure that we're designing that future work model in the right direction? And that brings me to the last bit, which is society. Look, obviously we live in a global environment, and there are different countries and different mindsets at different levels of thought processes. But that idea of, in general, we are striving towards a much more, societal focused business where we've got purpose, right at the core of who we are, and we're trying to really focus on the humanity aspects of work. So that hopefully kind of covers off, the definition. And you can see at one hand, it's quite deep, but on the other hand, it's comprehensive to really make leaders to think about, actually, this is something we really need to get a handle on. This is something that is within our power to design.
In a minute, I want to talk to you a little bit more around the themes, and I will come to that. But, as ambassador now in the UK for the Future of Work Institute, a couple of my clients have asked what I can do to come in and actually help them. What can we do? What can we offer around this sort of paper? What could we come in and do that would really make a fundamental difference to our clients?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Yvette. And not to sound too salesy, right? But one of the big things we really wanted to do with this paper was to develop a model, right? A model that could actually be used, and a model that's based on the real world. I keep coming back to the whole point is that the future work is a leadership, agenda. It's not a HR agenda, and it's not a small project alongside, other projects. It's a kind of comprehensive, approach to transformation, if you want to call it that. And so one of the things we developed as part of this was, it was really a model. So a model of the future of work where you could actually understand, number one, where your mindset is, because that's a really, really important point, right? What lenses are you looking at the world through, right? That's the first point. What mindset are you thinking about when it comes to work? One of the things we're really surprised about is, a number of leaders I've spoken to, they've quite a narrow view in terms of what the future of work is and what opportunities are out there for that. So that's the first thing. And then secondly is the model itself, where we can actually map, where you actually are as a business across these kind of 3 Ws at a much more detailed level, and really play with different scenarios in which that organization can go. And that's from a very practical perspective. And as of today, we've probably run about, 60 clients, engagements, based on that model. And I think the big thing for us, like, what are we learning from that process? I think one is it's helping to expand what people mean by the future of work. And I think secondly, it's giving people a recognition that actually this is something that is potential competitive advantage, right, against our competitors and in the marketplace, which is something that's often, jumped across. I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with the leader in the life sciences space. And, we're talking about this whole thing around transformation. And I was going, well, we talk about digital transformation, we talk about, change management, but actually, the real goal of a business in the future work for me is our ability to transform people within the business so that they can then transform, our organization in certain ways. So, that's really what we can do from a practical perspective, as I call it, make the future work real in your business, play with it, experiment, and think beyond this, concept of hybrid working. It's so much more than that. It's how we think, it's how we work, the tools we use, how we design that overall workforce. It's all of that.
Brilliant. So based on that, if you had to really pull out some core key insights, what would you like to really highlight about this paper and this interview? What do you think really will make a difference? What should people really be focusing on from that leadership perspective?
Well, I think the first thing is to craft a future of work story. Okay, you know, I'm a huge believer in the power of storytelling in businesses, and storytelling to kind of drive people along. I know that is something you're very passionate about as well. What I often find is nobody has really kind of defined their own story of you know, the future of work. And let me give you an example. You know, if you think about simple things like workforce, let's take one of the W's, right? You know, we're moving towards a workplace that probably in about 5 to 7 years will have about 50% of workers in some kind of freelance contracting, temporary type situation, right? They don't want to work for a business, but they want to work with the business, right? And that has all sorts of implications in terms of how we view this thing called the workforce, how we hire, what do we mean by an employee, what do we mean by collaborators, what do we mean by all of this kind of stuff. So I think, you know, that's the big one for me. The first thing for me is, you know, you have a future work story. Are you designing it in a purposeful and meaningful way? You know, from my investigation so far, potentially there's a big opportunity to kind of do that. I think the second piece then for me is this whole idea of, you know, the next generation of leadership. And this is where I kind of confuse people sometimes when I say perhaps the next level of leadership is no leadership, because a lot of the work that we're doing, particularly when we talk about this idea of, you know, on the work task side, is this decreasing of hierarchy, right? Trying to make organizations as flat as possible, decision-making process as flat as possible. And we're seeing a rise in things like agile thinking, and organizations are embracing things like design thinking, but they're all trying to flatten organizational structures. And that changes the role of a leader significantly. It changes them from a, you know, kind of control coordinator into a central hub or orchestrator. So that's the second thing. It's to recognize where leadership is going and where are you going to sit on that scale. And then I think the third thing for me that's really important is this whole idea of talent attraction and retention. And, you know, I know obviously CPL, we're in the talent business, but actually it's come out as a major element, you know, the research that we're talking about. And I'm looking at that from two ways, right? I think one is, how do we create total experiences for people that work with us that transform them in some way so that they will stay with us and they'll get meaningful work from that. You know, I think that's kind of one aspect. I think then for me, the other aspect, you know, on this kind of this total experiences, you know, kind of side of thing is really understand the talent that you have. So I like to use the phrase Rembrandt's in the attic. There's a lot of organizations don't fully understand the talent that they already have in the business and their ability maybe to step up or to step into you know, leadership roles and that kind of thing. And I suppose the last one for me then, Yvette, which is a nice segue into me starting to ask you questions, really is around this idea of continuous regenerative upskilling. You know, how do we get into a situation where we've got this constant flow of upskilling people, making sure we're providing them with, you know, kind of future focused skills, you know, both from a hard perspective and then more from a social skills perspective. I know some people like to call these skills human skills or soft skills. I prefer to call them social skills because ultimately they're about how we interact with each other. So I think, you know, that whole skills agenda and how we make sure, number one, we're upskilling our workforce with the right skills, we're constantly regenerating, and that people within the workforce are comfortable, you know, with that upskilling is a big thing. So with that now, I'm gonna turn tables on you a little bit, and let's see how good your answers are, Madame. Okay. So look, Yvette, look, I know, look, we speak a lot about this. I think every time we have conversations about, you know, the UK and in terms of the Future Work Institute, we talk a lot about two things. We talk about the skills gap in life sciences, and we talk about the skills development opportunity. And I know it's an area you're massively involved in, both in the UK and globally. So could you just give me a sense of that, the challenges you see it when it comes to this whole thing called skills, you know, particularly in the life sciences sector?
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's okay, I'm sort of going to focus on the UK today. I'm very lucky to get quite a wide-ranging global knowledge of what's sort of happening at the moment. But I'm going to look at the UK because I think there's some very interesting things here. First of all, we've run a series of webinars with different leaders within life sciences, And I was challenging one of those leaders on the sort of the talent shortage and skill shortage. And she actually said to me, there's not a talent shortage. We've got fantastic talent in this country. And I think, again, globally, we would see that most certainly across UK, Ireland and Europe. But the industry is changing, and the skills that we require now are quite different. So I know in the UK by 2030, we're going to need 130,000 new, really experienced, new skilled workers within life sciences. So several years ago, as an example, I got involved with some trailblazers. They were government-led, looking at employer-led apprenticeships. And I thought, what an amazing thing. So we got involved with those, and basically the employer designed those apprenticeship schemes for the workers. And I thought, we're going to see a massive uplift in this. So we worked primarily on one within clinical research, an apprenticeship scheme. We then worked with another apprenticeship scheme within regulatory. There's also another amazing one on HMPs. Now, if we just focused on the clinical research apprenticeship scheme, I speak a lot to different clients around everything from diversity, inclusion to the skill gaps and things like that. And something that came up very recently with quite a senior executive, we were talking about diversity inclusion, and he was saying to me, you know, we spend a lot of money here, we do so much. And at the end of that conversation, I said, that's fantastic. How many people have you got? How many young people have you taken on to the apprenticeship schemes? And he said, well, none. How does that fit with D&I? And I said, well, if you want to take gifted young people, maybe from a disadvantaged background, and get them into life sciences, wouldn't that be a fantastic way to do that? And yet the uptake on that scheme has not been very high, not high enough. It should be 30 times really what it is at the moment. And it does offer some amazing opportunities. So I think I then started looking a little bit more deeply into that. Why are we not taking up these fantastic employer-led, designed apprenticeship schemes? And I think there's a little bit of naivety in industry, if I'm really honest. I think people think someone else is going to train or get those skill gaps for them, and that's simply not going to happen. And then I started looking at our more mature workforce, who maybe their roles in the next few years, some of those will no longer exist, but they're fantastic employees. There's loyalty from them, and skills are so important. Why aren't we putting them onto those apprenticeship schemes and cross-skill training them, retaining them within our business and giving them the skills that we need tomorrow? And I think that's really, really key that we're looking at that. But again, I'm not seeing the industry itself come together on that. I recently was speaking about skill shortages. It seems to be a common theme with me, to a group of industry professionals. At the end of that, one of the very senior executives on that meeting said to me, Yvette, why aren't you coming into our company and talking to us about this? And I said, because I guess, number one, I'm from the staffing industry, and I don't know that you necessarily understand the amount of insight that we have and about how that we can sort of navigate with you those skills. And number two, we probably need to get a group of senior executives together that really take these skill shortages very, very seriously. We now in the UK are attracting, out of Europe, we're top now for phase 1 clinical research, phase 1 trials, and phase 2. We've got 30% of the world's advanced therapies trials going on here. What more motivation would you want as an organisation to start getting fantastic young people coming out of school or college onto that degree apprenticeship? Why wouldn't you look at your mature, loyal workers who you could cross-train? That's such a rich vein of skill and talent. And that would really start to help us nudge into where those skill shortages are, because going back to again, the feedback I have, we've got the talent in this country, we've got the talent in Ireland, we've got the talent across Europe. We need to train that up, we need to develop it, we need to focus on those future skills.
And look, I know you guys have kind of rolled out a couple of really innovative programs out there. Can you give us a sense of one of those programs, in terms of how it's worked for you, because, you definitely practice what you preach, right? So, which I know well from working with you closely, right? So can you give us a sense of, I laugh with a slight kind of nervous tick in the back of my head, but so can you tell us a bit about some of those programs? I know you've got a fantastic kind of physician to pharma program that's been successful, and it's really kind of hit the nail on the head for me.
We do. So first of all, I'd like to open up by saying that we became directly involved in those trailblazers. We gave up a lot of time to help with the development of that. And we actually now work very closely with Kent University. And in fact, we have a really good training function internally within our business. And we loaned our IP. We gave a lot of IP to Kent University because we believe in giving back. And doing as much as we can in the background for the industry that we are, incredibly passionate about. And I myself lobby a lot, getting out there into industry, speaking at events about those skills and talent shortages. So we actually this week ran a fantastic webinar. Because of COVID, we've had to change and adapt to what we've been doing. And so we actually ran a webinar this week, and we have been focusing on the journey to final signatory within medical affairs. And we brought together 5 industry panelists that are very well known within the industry. And we actually brought a high number of individuals that are on that journey at the moment. And that very experienced panel talked them through the changes that are going on. Now, something very interesting that comes up from the Future of Work Institute white paper that you've written is one of the core things that we need in the future are going to be individuals with a really high level of emotional intelligence. Yeah. How are we adapting to that? How are we making sure we're isolating out those skills when we're interviewing, when we're bringing talent in? Or how would we develop those skills that are already there, or that emotional intelligence, if you like, which is one of the harder ones to actually focus on. But we know as technology takes some of the roles, we need to do that. So that discussion point around those. And also something I'm so proud of. We 3.5 years ago decided we wanted to be able to help graduates get their first to industry place. When I joined industry many years ago, I'm too ashamed.
5 years ago, Yvette, yeah. We'll go with 5.
But when I joined Janssen, there were about 50 of us that joined on the same day, and we spent 6 or 7 years going through really incredible training and development, and we all went into different pathways. And in 2008, 2009, a lot of global pharma businesses are outsourcing a lot more. They got rid of a lot of their learning and development departments. And that's in many ways compromised our industry because we don't have those big training programs. And in all honesty, a lot of the CROs haven't been able to pick up all of that training and development that we sort of need out there. And that is so key. So we as a business 3.5 years ago, we spent 12 months developing a fantastic training program. And we started that program with 15 creme de la creme graduates from biomedical degree background. We brought them in, we spent 7 days taking them through all the fundamentals of clinical research, training and developing them. And then we used our staffing wing to get them their first to industry role. 3 years on, we have now fully funded, trained and found first to industry roles for over 250 graduates in the UK. And I feel really proud about that. It was a big capital expenditure for us, but we wanted to invest in our future. And we've now converted, because again, COVID stopped us doing the classroom training, we've now converted that to an online platform. And I am, once we're sort of a little bit more free from this, going to get out to market and really speak to as many clients as I can about that program. And I will be offering free places for graduates to come in and study through that platform. Some will still be face-to-face classroom training, but really start to make sure that our graduates coming out of university are given the best possible opportunity to get that first to industry career.
All right, thanks, Yvette. I know, our parent organisation, Outsourcing Corporate, is massively focused in on skills development around the world, because we are all seeing this, skills gaps all over the place that could affect organizations competitively, but equally nations competitively as well, which is a really another interesting kind of perspective on that. So with that, guys, I'm seeing lots of really nice comments coming in, Yvette, which is always great. I'm just going to see if we have any specific questions on there, or I can really ask you really awkward. But there's a lot of nice ones. I think because it's funny, there's a general agreement around this idea of moving towards much kind of flatter type structures in organizations. I think a lot of the messages that we're seeing there are really resonating, with people out there. I like to say, very simply put, Nizam, thank you for that. A flat structure is better than a tall structure, and very, very true. We're definitely starting to see, particularly kind of top 5% in organizations and workplace innovation, really adapting either flat structures or very much as kind of self-management structures. Lots of nice comments here. Nothing specifically in terms of questions, which is fine. I hear talking about passion and talent, which I totally agree. I think sometimes as organizations we can come across as a little bit corporate and a little bit cold, and sometimes we don't necessarily see the passion. I think for me, Claudia, just to come back to your point there, it's around how do we create meaningful and transformational work for people, that by default, engages. I'm not trying to force engagement from the other way around. So we're coming near to the end of time, believe it or not, Yvette. So I'm going to kind of close. I'm going to ask us both to close in a way. So I'm going to ask you, Yvette, if there's one thing you would like people to take away from your passion around skills development kind of powering the future of work, what would it be? What would you leave it at?
I think the industry needs to have a very, very serious conversation about our accountability for the future skills. And I think we need to be very brave. We need to go out and please anybody on this today that's interested in getting involved. I would love to get together some core executives from within industry, have a really honest conversation around some of our lack of duty of care around bringing either youngsters into this industry, and we've got a massive window of opportunity now. The global pandemic has taught so many young people about a career within research. We've got a window of time. We've already seen the nursing profession, lots more people coming into industry. We're already seeing, I'm seeing it in real time at the moment with people, youngsters sending emails into us at this business saying, how do I get a job in clinical research? Where prior to the pandemic, most people fell into that by virtue of an accident, not because they necessarily went out and decided, I'm going to become a clinical research associate. So I think we have to now be really accountable as an industry. We need to get some kind of forum together where we actually decide the way ahead, where we take responsibility, where, for example, particularly in the UK, where we have these apprenticeship schemes, companies come together and say, I am going to take at least one person in on the clinical research programme or the regulatory programme, and I'm going to be accountable for getting young people trained or getting some of my more mature workers onto that course and transfer their skills over so I can retain that talent within my business long term.
Thanks very much, Yvette. And I suppose my big one really is that, guys, very simply, if we think broad enough about the future of work, it does represent real collaborative and competitive advantage. I genuinely think that the next transformation in business will be about looking inward. By transforming ourselves, we can transform our organizations. And I think it's up to us as leaders to really embrace that perspective, think holistically, connect the dots, and create great impact. So, Yvette, listen, I'd love to say thank you very much. It seems a bit weird interviewing, actually, because you're our colleague, and I know we work closely together. As Yvette will know, we like to take action. So, watch this space for a number of forums that we're going to create over in the UK, over the coming period of time, and into Europe as well. If you want to find out any more about the white paper, guys, it's splattered all over this LinkedIn Live. Please reach out to Yvette. I know she's very collaborative. And with that, I'd like to say, guys, thanks for all the lovely comments. Lots resonating, Yvette, from our conversation. And I'd like to say thank you to you, Yvette, and thanks, guys, for listening. And with that, we'll call it a day.
Barry, thank you so much.
Thanks, Yvette.
See you soon. Take care.